This is a compilation of all the shorts I have made. If this video gets 500 likes, I'll remake, re-edit and re-record with my actual voice.
Hey. True story, this happened on Christmas 2024, this year. Well, technically last year. Happy New Year, guys. But I'm not gonna waste your time. For Christmas, I got a brand new gaming chair. It's amazing. My room doesn't have much space, so I had to put it in the corner of my room, facing my TV and the back to my closet. On this day, I was listening to creepy videos. I got a text from my friend. It was just them saying hey. I looked at the text and swiped it away. And at that moment, hey was heard from behind me. I swear to God. My heart dropped. I snapped my neck behind me, seeing nothing. I've had paranormal stuff like this happen before. But this time, it was different. The other times, it's been subtle. Like a little whisper. But this time it was a normal voice, at a high sound. I still sit in the gaming chair a lot, and hopefully this doesn't happen again. I'll continue to post if it does. But the fact that my friend texted me hey only a few seconds before I heard it, it makes me ask, what was the sound? Was it my imagination? I was watching a scary video after all, but I know it wasn't my mind. Recently I felt weird, like something is staring at me. Anyone know anything about that?
Doppelganger. So this barely happened a week ago and I don't know exactly what I saw. So this takes place at my mom and her boyfriend's trailer that we are at temporarily for her boyfriend's job, and I also have a younger brother. So one night I woke up at 3 in the morning and the TV was on, which was in the corner. It was playing Mr. Bowen, which was normal, but I then saw my younger brother and mother staring at each other and then turn and go to bed. I said my little brother's name to ask why he was awake, but there was no response. I heard snoring and he was asleep. I stayed up, and in the morning when everyone was awake I asked my mom why she and my younger brother were up, and she said that she and him were not asleep and that he was asleep by 12 and she went to sleep at 1. I don't know what I saw and don't know if that the people I saw were doppelgangers. I have had a past with paranormal things. That one time I had the worst dream, then hear the worst news the next day. So me and my parents loved camping. I am an only child, so I got my own tent whenever we went camping. I was maybe about 14 then. I am 26 now. We lived up in Maine and there is a lot of woods where we lived. There was that one day, we were out in the woods doing our yearly camping trip. It was around 1 in the morning, I couldn't sleep, at least I thought. That night I was laying in my tent and I heard a car pull up. These tents were cheap and air didn't get in there much, so I had the tent not all the way zipped, but back to the point. That car that pulled up, I didn't recognize it was a white Ford. A man exits the car, I couldn't really see his face, he walks up to my tent, then I wake up. It's broad daylight, my parents are already packing things up to leave. We get in the car and go to the supermarket because we needed some batteries since our flashlights died. And I pick up the local newspaper and there is a report. Here is how it sort of went: breaking boy gone missing, suspected kidnapping in North Maine woods. The paper shows an overview of the woods. That area is only about 15 feet away from where we camped.
Grandma's house. I genuinely think my grandma's house was haunted. I haven't been there in almost a decade, so this is all from my childhood. It was one of those old Persian houses with fountains and trees in the front yard and a 2-story house in the back. I remember a bunch of weird stuff happening there. Like the time I was just chilling with my aunt and sister talking about random stuff when we asked each other about our imaginary friends as kids, and me and my sister described the same kid, or the fact that me and my second aunt had both seen a bald dude going up and down the street late at night in a uniform on different occasions, but nobody else seems to have seen him ever. There was also an old small mini yard behind the house that our grandma would never let us go in. There was also a small basement-like door slightly in the ground filled with vintage furniture and stuff like that, but I never went there too much. It always creeped me out, and it doesn't help that our grandma is a fortune teller, and once I remember she whipped out her cards and the first thing she said was, "Someone really close is dying." 2 weeks later they find the dude across the street dead in his wheelchair. Beautiful place TBH, but never going there again.
My brother was almost snatched. This was in the 70s just outside Philly when we, as Gen Zers, did everything on our bikes from riding through trails to build forts to traveling to malls to blow tons of quarters in arcades. One hot summer day outside a Kmart, my brother, who was 1 year older at 10, was approached by a greasy-looking guy with long hair and a beard driving in a beat-up station wagon asking him for directions. He offered my brother $10, a serious amount of money for kids our age, if he could show him around town, and stow his bike in the trunk. Wanting to get in on the action, I said he couldn't take my brother with him unless I came and got another $10. After that, my BF says same thing. Thinking of taking 3 kids might have been too tall an order, and he sped off. A week later, the guy was in the local papers for being arrested after he abducted another young boy, sexually assaulted him, all around the same day as we were approached. It truly scares me that we came that close to a convicted sexual predator with nary a thought for our safety in hopes of scoring some quick cash. I almost ran smooth out of that house. Terrifying. I was a paranormal investigator with a local team for a few years, before circumstances made me unable to keep up with the team. During that time, I fought off multiple strong attacks from non-corporeal beings, who wanted to either harm or possess me. I saw and heard things that were definitely not normal. There was a team member who had a habit of taking artifacts home from a variety of places, many of which were inhabited, cursed, etc. The same team member also has a rather dramatic family life that can sometimes become exacerbated by the energies that exist in her home. This team member asked the team's leader if we could bring our equipment to her home and investigate, since there had been a sharp escalation of negative activity from both corporeal and non-corporeal sources within the walls. We agreed to the request and set an appointment. After meeting at headquarters and getting the equipment loaded, the team decided who would be drivers and who would ride in the drivers' vehicles to the location, since there would be limited parking. I was one of the drivers and had 3 team members and an ice chest of soda and food in my car. The drive took about 40 minutes, then we got a walkthrough for additional information and deciding on camera placement. We had a few team members already setting up the base under the carport for monitors and such. While in the living room of the home, the team member showed us multiple display cases of dolls. Many of the dolls were artifacts, so captured my interest. One in particular had a red dress, white pinafore, and red bonnet. It was a small porcelain doll with beautifully painted features. When I was turning to move away from the case, the doll that I just described reached toward me. I started to doubt what I saw, but a team member who was next to me said, "That doll just moved." For me, that confirmed what I had seen. I almost ran out of that place. I have never before or since had such a strong desire to run. I willed myself to stay and investigate, despite the scary moving doll, because I wanted to find out what I could do to help with the negative activity in the home.
Scary childhood story with me and my sister. I might have been around 11 at the time, and it was only my sister and I still living at home by then. My dad worked overnight a lot, and that night it was just us in the house. I remember it was very dark, so maybe we had went to bed less than an hour before this happened. All of a sudden I heard someone ruffling what sounded like Christmas wrapping paper or loud plastic, maybe even tinfoil. You could hear the way they were going through it and tearing it, etc. Then I heard my sister call out my name from her room across the hall and shout, "Stop." She sounded angry, and I remember exactly what I felt and thought when I replied. I yelled back, "That's not me." Literally, as I was completing my reply, a flood of fear and confusion went through my mind. I knew my sister, and the anger I heard in her voice was because it was scaring her too, even though she probably did think it was me. So once I said it wasn't me, I could feel the intense increase in fear that we both felt. It was very scary, and it stopped as soon as we started talking about it. My sister had another scary story from around that time, give or take a few years. She was reading a book in the living room while I was outside playing, and she would hear someone tapping on the wall, and every time she looked up to see what it was, the tapping stopped. I don't remember us ever talking about that night again, but for a period of time after that I requested to sleep in her bed because I was scared.
Sleep paralysis. Few months ago, I experienced sleep paralysis for the first time. I had a dream just before a sleep paralysis happened. I had a dream that I was laying in bed and kept being pulled down by my leg. I woke up in my dream seeing a shapeshifter trying to drag me down. It was constantly switching between cats and Shadow Man. When I woke up, my room is cold, like freezing cold, and I was sweating. I kept feeling like I was in danger, like my body was in fear but frozen. I realized that I couldn't move my body and was panicking. My head was on the side just looking at the closet that's across my bed. I felt trapped, felt like I was in danger and couldn't do anything. The only thing running through my mind was, I'm going to die, and someone is going to kill me. My gut feelings kept telling me that someone is hiding in my closet. It felt like forever. I finally was able to move and I got out of my bed so fast. Turned on the light and slammed my closet door shut. I couldn't sleep for a few hours, which was worse because I only slept for 2 hours just before the sleep paralysis hit. I saved our mother's life when I was a toddler. When I was a toddler, our mother was getting ready for work, and everything was fine with me. No fuss whatsoever until she was ready to walk out that door. She said that I was inconsolable. I was gripping her clothes and wrapping my legs tightly around her while screaming until my face was red, saying, "No, don't go." She tried everything. My siblings were trying to entertain me, but I just wasn't having it. Being a single mother of 6 in the 1960s with all those mouths to feed, my mother called her work as a last resort, telling them that I came down with something and was very ill. She said that 5 minutes after she hung up the phone, with me still in her arms, I wiggled to get down, saying, "I love you, Mama, you can go to work now, bye." Just like that. Well, our mother found out after having to make a series of detours to get to work that, at the exact spot her car would have been, and at that exact moment she would have been there, one of the worst huge car pileups ever at that time on that freeway, killing and injuring a lot of people. I guess I just needed to delay her a little bit. Needless to say that my mother paid a little more attention from then on.
A strange situation happened to me. I was on my way to school at approximately 7 and 5 minutes. I chose a short route away from people because I hate walking in a crowded place. The distance between my house and school is not long, but it takes about a quarter of an hour. While I was walking on that road, I did not notice anyone walking nearby. So I continued walking quietly, knowing that there were not many residents in that place. While I was walking, I heard from a house the sound of a woman screaming and crying, so I stopped walking and not a minute passed and silence prevailed. I was almost approaching. The house was curious, as the woman's voice was loud, and it was strange that it was suddenly quiet, but suddenly a man came out wearing a black shirt and jeans with some bloodstains that seemed to be very recent. He looked at me for a few moments while I remained in my place in fear, then he left without even looking at me, and I was one of the intensity of fear made me move quickly and leave without looking back. I did not inform the police, and I still feel remorse even though 2 weeks and a few days have passed since the situation.
Weird things happened in my house. I moved houses in my town for my dad's work, and the house we moved into had people die in it. I don't know how many, but I know for sure the old couple that used to live there died. The wife had died earlier, and the old man walked outside one day, fell on the dirt driveway and died. My friend was neighbors with him, and her mom was the one who called the police. There were also a lot of people saying a man had hung himself in the house. Anyways, the first couple years we were there, strange things would happen. My dogs would sit in the living room and bark at straight darkness in other rooms. One time I was walking in the hallway at night and I stopped in front of the laundry room doorway because I saw something. There was a giant shadow man in the corner of the room staring right at me, and I ran to my room. Another time my friend was walking past my house and called me because they saw someone in my house. He described it as a giant shadow man in the window. I never told him about what I'd seen, but his description was almost exactly the same. Another time my sister went in my room at night and told me the outdoor string lights were exploding. We could see them through the sliding glass doors to go outside, and we watched one at a time. A random light would suddenly go very bright and then explode and make a violent popping sound. I looked to where they get plugged in, and they weren't plugged in at all. We were too scared to go outside at night, so in the morning we went out to check on them and none were exploded and everything was perfectly fine. I don't know enough about electricity to debunk that, so I don't know. It's been a while since anything's happened, but I still wanted to share. If anyone has an explanation for the lights, feel free to tell.
For some background, I was probably around 10 or so. I had blonde hair, quite tall for my age, and obsessed with anything horror. My dad had started drinking again, something he did when stressed. It was a very nice night, a little breezy, yes, but it was nice. My dad had decided to go out on the trampoline and look at the stars, something we would never do again. We went outside and laid down on the trampoline. I was very scared of the dark and still am. Since I was scared, I laid close to my dad. Now, whenever we went out there, I got this feeling. I was very tense. Now, whenever we laid down, it was almost immediate. Shit started to hit the fan. We had very long weeds under our trampoline, as the mower couldn't reach under there. It sounded like there was something moving around under the weeds. Now, I couldn't tell if it was the wind or if there was something under there, but I told my dad about it. My dad, being in, brushed it off. After a while, I kept hearing the sound, and eventually my dad was a bit on edge too. Then that's when we heard this clicking sound behind our heads. It sounded like a clock ticking. At this point, we leaned up and looked around. I don't quite remember what happened here, but I'll try my best. Me and my dad were freaking out, especially me. Eventually we went inside. We came back out and my dad loaded the gun. My dad also gave me this, almost sword-like object. I don't know how else to explain it. I forgot to mention, whenever we went back outside, we smelt this smell. It smelled like death in a way. Anyway, my dad started walking around and looking around for whatever we could have heard. After a couple minutes, I went up to him to see if he found anything. I still had the weapon in hand. Just then he screamed and told me to run. I ran and still had the weapon in my hand. As he saw me running, with the weapon. He told me to drop it as he didn't want me to cut myself. I didn't drop it. I remember I was in the garage freaking out as I heard gunshots from my dad. We eventually ran and made it inside as we were freaking out. Now, I know the noises under the trampoline could probably be brushed off by being just the wind, but how do you explain the clicking behind our heads?